We've got the scripture, John 10:10, the devil came to steal, kill and destroy, but God came to bring life that we might live it to the full. And I realised one day the devil comes to steal, kill and destroy my hope, my faith, my ability to stay firm in trial, my ability to proclaim God's goodness. God came that I might live life and live it to the full, that no matter what, I can live a full and whole life completely in Him regardless of external circumstances.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations with me, your host, Angie Dixon. My guest today is Kylee Black. Kylee is a social entrepreneur committed to cultivating strong, connected community. Through her own experiences with disability and complex health challenges, Kylee has been able to create spaces for others that help empower them in their own journeys. Kylee is the CEO of Kylee Co, an online platform selling products by the disability community for everyone. We talk about Kylee's journey, her advocacy for people with disabilities, creating safe spaces for people with disabilities within faith communities and expressions, the power of connectedness, and we explore the idea that accessibility actually benefits all of us. This is episode 102 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Kylee Black. Kylee, it's great to be able to kōrero with you today. Kia ora, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, mate.
And for our listeners, can you just share a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you a bit?
Sure. My name is Kylee Black. I reside in Waikato. I've been in Waikato since, not going to do the maths, so since 2012. I've been here, but I was born in Hawke's Bay.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, cool. So both sides of my family come from Hawke's Bay. Interestingly, I haven't lived there myself, but no matter where we lived, every single year, every holidays, we went home to the Hawke's Bay.
Oh,
So
nice.
Hawke's Bay's always been home, and it's always where whānau is, you know?
That's cool.
And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. Whereabouts in Hawke's Bay?
So I was born in Napier.
Yeah.
And my family's from Hastings, Havelock North, and Otani and Waipukurau.
Nice. I grew up in Hastings until I was about 16 and then we moved to Christchurch. So,
Love
the space.
I'm very proud of our heritage there and what our families have been able to do. And my uncle is an established artist and painter down there.
Cool.
So, yeah. I grew up in Warkworth, North Auckland, most of my childhood, and have lived after that I was in Tauranga and then in Taupo for a number of years before I came here.
Cool.
So it's just a bit of a background of who I am. And I am a lover of life, fierce and passionately capture the moments that I get to live, and have a huge heart and passion for seeing people in community and getting behind and supporting and championing one another. And I have complex health and disability needs also that make life interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about the interesting ways that has changed life for you.
Yeah.
You received a diagnosis when you were 22.
Yes.
About what was going on with your body. How long had you been looking for those answers, and what was the diagnosis?
That's not a straightforward answer, actually. It depends where you want to start that story and which answer, actually.
Yeah, right.
So when I was 22, I had a severe injury to my left leg through actually a very minor it's a great story. I had a kickboxing injury. But actually it was just a dance group. But I'd been getting a lot more stretchy over time, and I slipped on the wax floor. I slipped on a wax floor and I damaged the sciatic nerve and popped, I don't know, the joint or ligament or, something in my
Yeah.
leg. I caused an injury. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just thought, oh, yeah, she'd be right. Uh, but by the time I got home, I could hardly walk up the stairs. And then over the next few days, I mean, like injuries don't get worse over time. Do you know what I mean? Like you have the injury and it starts getting better. You don't have the injury and then continue losing more function. Um, but that's what was happening, and so my leg retracted up, and I couldn't get on the ground, and it was swelling, and it was changing color, and then I got mum. The pain was horrendous, mate. Like, and I got mum to put deep heat cream on the back of my leg, and I screamed. Like, it was
Wow.
just a little packet of like tester cream. I literally thought it was expired or it was damaged or something happened, because it felt like someone had taken the top 3 layers of my skin and literally shaved it with a razor. Um,
Wow.
and for basically the next 4 days, I sat in a pool, I sat in a cold bathtub, I sat in water. Like, I couldn't escape just like the pain. I didn't know at that point I had started developing a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, which is basically like a really severe nerve pain disorder, that causes excruciating nerve and burning pain. And so I had quite a severe onset case of it. And basically, it took us a bit to find the diagnosis, but I remember going into my GP and he's like, sent me to a sports GP and he's like, well, this is what I think you've got, but I don't want to diagnose it. So you've got 5 days to prove me wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, because it's a horrendous diagnosis to give a young person.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a horrendous diagnosis to give, and it's a he didn't want that journey for me. He wanted to do everything he could to ensure it really wasn't that. um, but I've had a lot of treatment over the years and ended up having high dose ketamine treatments in hospital at that point in time. But is that where my journey started? No. So I mentioned to you at the beginning of starting to talk about that, is that in the months leading up to my injury, I'd started becoming a whole lot more flexible. I've never felt a stretch in my muscles. So when you do like your stretching exercises in school and you stretch your
Yeah.
hamstrings and you give yourself a good stretch. I've never felt a stretch in my muscles hardly before. What stops my muscles
Wow.
is my bones. Um, yeah, and so I'm just like, I do these like, I'm like, are we meant to be feeling something? Like, I don't know. They could stand me. We did this exercise in class, and you stand your heel against the wall, and you stand against the wall. So your flat back, whole everything's against the wall, and then you have a partner, and they take your leg and they walk your leg up till you feel a stretch in your thigh. Except my partners could take my leg all the way up and have my ankle bone touch the wall above my head.
Wow.
So
And
they
you
did
weren't
the splits
feeling
for
a
me.
stretch.
No. I
Wow.
had earlier, I think I had earlier, like, um but what everyone had noticed in class are like, you were getting so much more flexible. And one of the teachers was a yoga teacher. She was so frustrated. She's like, I've been training for 25 years and I can't do what you're just doing off the bat.
Was it kind of like a novelty to begin with? Like, wow, look how I can stretch, or was it worrying?
I was very proud.
Yeah.
I was very proud of my flexibility. And I was always the kid that did the tricks and the circus tricks and whatnot. Um, but that's the more fun side of it, right? And the what people think is just like, oh, I should be right, like, haha. Um, but I'd grown up with joint dislocations. I'd grown up with really severe um, muscle and cramping in my legs, of falling over and breaking bones all the time, of falling over on a flat concrete pathway. And like, I experienced a lot of bullying growing up, for how many injuries I had. Or I had really high fitness and no endurance. Like I'd never been able to work a full-time job, for example, without having naps, going home and doing a nap and then going back out. Like I live full life with gutso and push myself to the outer limits, and I always have. But like in my teens, and yeah, like I developed a blood disorder called cyclic neutropenia. I developed scoliosis of my spine. I developed a hearing impairment, and all these different things that I mean, as a kid, like I remember being 13, I literally thought I was a freak show because people would tell me that you can't have more than one diagnosis, and I had quite a number of different things happening. And I just didn't, I mean, we didn't have internet like we do today. We didn't have connection on social media. You didn't have the open conversations. I just had a lot of bullying and told, and from doctors as well, that I was different, that my body didn't function like other bodies did. It didn't work like other bodies did, but no one ever knew why. They couldn't connect the pieces, and that over time I would need science and medical technology to catch up. And that's been my whole life. Honestly, that's been my whole
Yeah.
life.
I can see why
Um,
you said it was complex at the
yeah,
start because there are so many interweaving things
mm,
going on there.
yeah.
How does it actually affect you in terms of what life looks like day to day for you?
Well, fast forward to now. I was bedbound 6 months, homebound 3.5 years after that initial injury.
Wow.
I went from not being able, I went from living life to not being able to use the left side of my body and my legs. I'd had developed a nerve injury from that as well. I've had significant nerve injuries that meant that I've damaged the actual nerve and had to relearn how to use my left side again. And some of those dislocations are really scary, you know.
Yeah.
It took me 4 years to come back from. I caused a really severe brachial plexus injury, damaging my shoulder, and had caused a neck injury also. So it's taken me a long time to come back from that, but um, well, I'll start with this. I have a feeding tube, a surgical feeding tube that goes into my stomach, and an extension that goes down into my bowel. And so I am fed directly into my bowel, bypassing my stomach, and have the stomach tube that I can give medications or fluid in, or can drain it when I'm really unwell. And then I have an ostomy. So an ostomy, I've had all the lower part of my bowel removed, like the lowest part of my bowel removed,
Mm.
and then that's been brought out to make a surgical opening on my stomach. And then I have a bag that I collect the waste in there.
Yeah.
And some people now will be thinking, oh yeah, gross, yuck, like I wouldn't want to live that, like I don't want that, like, and there's a lot of myths and stuff around it, but actually my life before having the ostomy placed in now is just so different. and and I tell people, I'm like, well, it's not all bad. Like when you get a stomach bug and you get stuck on the toilet, I just carry on with life.
Yeah. True.
Like
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
like how great is that,
Yeah.
it's not all bad.
And it
um
actually frees you up to live life in a way you couldn't without it, doesn't it?
Oh, life changing. I also have a central line called a Hickman line, and that's a line that is surgically implanted in my chest and then goes into my blood vessels and down to my heart. And that's how I get my hydration. So I was born with a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder of your collagen. So often when I'm speaking to groups of people, I'll ask them, do you know what connective tissue or collagen disorder is? And so if you think of if you think of a thick rubber band, yeah,
Yep.
when you stretch it out, it stretches out, and
Yep.
when you let it go, it springs back into shape.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tied it to hold a magazine together, it holds the magazine tightly in place, right?
Yep.
But what happens if that rubber band is perishing? If you use it to hold a magazine in place, the magazine pushes the rubber band out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't hold the magazine in place. That's my body. That's the
Wow.
body that I live in today. So a lot of my joints dislocate. My internal organs are stretching, my blood vessels are stretchy. So my gut stopped working, and I spent 2 years in hospital more than out, but I've spent my whole life in and out for long periods of time. Um, and yeah, it's been a scary and an overwhelming road, and I've come close to losing life quite a number of times as well. Um, and at one point, why do I have the feeding tube? And that's because my gut stopped being able to push food and nutrients through my digestive system, and so I was ending up with a lot of significant bowel obstructions, and a lot of vomiting. But I also started taking my swallow stopped working, and I started having it go down into my lungs, and that's a whole nother form of terror, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Wow.
and I was told I'd never eat orally ever again. And I'm so lucky that today I get to. Most of my life has lived in recline, and I use a wheelchair, and yeah, battle severe pain and behind the scenes realities. But like, I think through that, when you lose so much so young, so many times over and over, you also really start to realize what really matters in life
Yeah.
and what's valuable in life. And having fought back from the brink so many times, I don't I wanted to make sure that I had used and enveloped every opportunity and chance I had while I had it, that I never look back and think, if only I'd done more with that thing that I had. I can look back and go, like, there's 3 foods I can eat orally, but like, it's not a limitation because I've been way more restricted than that in the past. And so it doesn't feel like a restriction, it feels like a gift.
Yeah.
And,
Cool.
and I've got friends that aren't here now, and I'm still here. So what do I do with that privilege? What do I do to live my best life, and a life that feels and supports other people as well? Which kind of starts to lead into a bit of like what we do and why we
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It leads very well into what I was going to ask, which is, not everyone who has a disability wants to be an advocate for disabilities or be the awareness person. In the same way that not every
Mm,
Maori wants to be the face of anti-racism.
mm,
A lot of people just want to get on with living their lives, but
mm,
you have chosen that.
mm.
Why was it that was something that you were passionate about doing?
That's a great question. Um, I grew up being the outcast and the kid that people didn't have time for or couldn't be bothered with. And I've overcome a lot of significant mental health barriers in my teens as well. And interestingly enough, I was my dad, when I was a young teen, had a brain tumor and was left with permanent head and joint epilepsy. And so helped support mum with raising my siblings and helping support my dad and care for the whānau and that kind of stuff. And having a lot of misunderstanding and misjudgment, and not having a name for what was going on for a really long time, and no one knowing or understanding anything. And that was a real spur, and pushing back on bullying, and pushing back on isolation. But I think when I was, I'll, I'll pivot here for a slight moment, and say that when I was that young girl, 22 years old, I thought I had my story, mate. I thought I'd overcome my teens. I'd come through that story. I had my story. I had my testimony, and I would go on and preach that story for the rest of my life, and how God had stepped in, and how I had my faith, and how that had helped me. I didn't know that was actually the training grounds to prepare me for the next journey, which was about to be 100
Yeah,
times harder, you know.
yeah,
Um, but I remember laying there in that bed early on, and I knew that if I was going to come through this journey, that I was going to have to be really intentional, and really fight to maintain my mindset and life and living. And how do I do that? Because I kind of like I'd fought depression, and I knew that if I fell into really severe depression in this space again, it was going to be 100 times harder to fight anything in this journey whatsoever. So to put really intentional barriers kind of between, I see it's like a bit of a sand dune, right? Like you stand on the side of a sand dune and you can be safe and the ground can be safe, but actually you're not, because that sand dune can give out at any moment under you and you have no control over that. So you've got like the sand dune, and then you've got this softer sand, and you've got the harder sand and the grass and the car park and whatnot. So how do I put fences between myself and a space that I no longer have control in, to navigate things, to protect myself? And so I started looking up like, how do I remain engaged in community? The whole world can tell me what I can't do and what I don't have, but how do I flip that script, and what do I have and what can I do? And how do I find opportunity and chance in the situation? And I asked myself a pivotal question that changed the entire landscape of my entire life and trajectory moving forward. I had the use of my right hand, and I looked down at my hand and I said, well, what can I do with what's in my hand right now? You know? And I was like, well, I have access to my right hand. I have access to a computer and the internet, and I can see the lake, the sky, and the sun, which was an incredible gift to have that at that point in time. But what's in my hand and what can I do with what's in my hand has become a life message and mantra for me. And like that, one step at a time, and soon enough, when you look back, those steps turn into miles, and we come further than we ever could. But it doesn't start with the big things, right?
Yeah.
It starts with the little decisions. It starts with the well, I can watch a movie for myself. I can get myself out of my head. But the reality is that even now, as I sit here with you today, I really struggle in the reality of my life. I really struggle with the battle and the pain and the limitations and how much my world is controlled by my struggles, or having to connect to IVs or feeding tubes and all of that. If I look at my world and my reality, I drown.
Yeah.
And I drown real fast. But if I can look outside of my world to see the world of others, to see what I can do and what I do have, not what I can't do and don't have, and to ask what's in my hand and what can I do in this moment. Because the thing is that if I'm struggling, there's other people out there too. And if I'm feeling isolated and alone, well, actually, I have time and I have access to my phone. Like, I can message others to say, "Hey, mate, how are you doing? I'm just thinking of you." Like, and that's exactly how I started. I made it my job and my mission early on. I was like, well, I can't do anything to change my own circumstances, but if I can do something to change someone else's, or even just brighten them up, then it makes my journey worth it too. And so, yeah, started writing to other people and encouraging other people and sharing messages and writing blogs. And actually, what started me sharing, honestly, was a forced need initially, because I remember my best friend came in one day crying her eyes out. I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, you didn't tell me you're dying. You never told me you're dying. And I said, hold on, what? I'm not dying, honey. And she's like, but they told me you are. And so, amazing what transpires through community, right? If you're really sick and you're in and out of hospital a lot and you're having really intensive treatments, and they're trying to work to get on top of the disease that was spreading at the time, that's scary for people. And
Yeah.
and the other thing is that we had constantly we're fueling, how's Kylie, how's she doing, what's going on, what's this, what's that. So we actually started having illness free days. I'm like, you can come over, but we're not talking about crips, we're not talking about EDS, we're not talking about illness. Like, I want to be just Kylie, you
Yeah.
know I want to be Kylie outside of the illness. And so I started writing a blog so that we could tell people, go read it on the blog. Like, that's the actual factual information, and that's our update, and that's what's happening. And so it was born out of care. It was born out of care and regard, and but it was also born out of protecting and supporting my loved ones. And the other thing that was amazing really early on is how our language fuels not just our perspective of ourselves, but our perspective of others.
Yeah.
and how they view us too. So I talked about like writing the encouraging messages to others, and that transpired over time to actually starting an organization called Spirit Spark Plugs. That was all about sparking other people's spirits and highlighting how many young people were homebound, bedbound, hospital bound around our country, around of the world, because you didn't see people; they were hidden from the world.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to clarify something really quickly. I use the term bound in regards to being bedbound or homebound because my situation and my circumstances bound me to that space, and I didn't have the capacity or the supports that broke me out of that situation.
Yeah.
I'm not bound to my wheelchair, and I would never
Yes.
use that terminology with my wheelchair.
Yeah.
My wheelchair gives me the freedom to get out and live my life.
Yeah.
However, those circumstances around being like stuck in my bed situation and things like that, I didn't have home supports coming in. I didn't have the supports that allowed me to live full life in that space. I was a prisoner of that space and those circumstances at that
Yeah.
point in time. And even now, most of my life is spent in recline in bed in my wheelchair and on the couch. But with access to my phone and technology and the
Yeah.
supports in place now, I live a really full, busy life through my phone, through technology. But yeah, so so I just started connecting with people, and then yeah, we made the Spirit Spark Plugs. And then I started hand making these encouragement books that we sent out around the world. And then we started, people started sending things in to put into packages as well that they'd made. And so we sent out 600 packages over 2 years around the world to young
Awesome.
people that were home in difficult and challenging circumstances. And it fueled and gave fire, and it gave reason and meaning and purpose and life outside of my situation and my circumstances in it. And so that's kind of where we started, and then being a voice and speaking up and raising awareness and educating and using my own journey to allow doctors to ask questions and be inquisitive and learn, because that's something I can do in my circumstances. It's something I can do with what's in my hands.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that whole focus on what can I do with what's in my hands, because
Mm.
that's not triumphalism. It's not going, well, this body's not doing what it's told now, but one day it's going to be amazing.
Mm.
It's not pretending that there's not hard stuff, but it's going, okay, in the middle of all this stuff that's hard,
Mm.
where is the good?
Mm.
And what can I do to bring life to myself and others?
I mean, it doesn't take much to be kind, and I think that's a message for me is like, oh, even I still remember being that discarded teen who just wanted to be accepted and included and didn't feel like they had a voice, a place, a position, or nothing, you know? Um, and how hard is it to come alongside others and me in encouragement? And a lot of people now, I run a lot of spaces that are all around building community and encouragement, getting behind
Mm.
each other, the idea that alone we get so far, together we get so much further.
Yeah.
And actually the thing is that I'm a disabled person that needs support in my life, but here's the thing, right? We all need support in our life to live our lives.
Totally.
You
Yeah.
don't turn up to work, no one turns up to work being completely independent in their own regard. No one raises kids independently on their own. Most people don't milk their own cows and fossil their own fuel and
Yeah.
like build their own house independently on their own. There's like this level, arbitrary level of up to here is community and everything above it is abnormal. But like I've done a bit of, and this is a total detour, sorry, but I've done a bit of speaking around the difference between independence versus interdependence as well.
Yeah.
Because independence says that I have to do it on my own, but
Yeah.
it also means isolation, disconnection, and loneliness. But interdependence is community,
Yeah.
and community is doing it together, and community is getting behind one another, and and yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal to have independence and do things for yourself, and so I'm not completely disregarding that. But the bigger conceptual idea is that actually, if we look at community and focus on interdependence, I bring what I'm good at, you bring what you're good at, our listeners bring what our listeners are good at. We turn up with our strengths and our skills, and we've got a stronger platform than if we're each individually trying to do it ourselves. And actually, when I bring my strengths, it doesn't matter about what I can't do or what I don't have, because it's looking at what I do have. And my disability means like there's lots I can't do, but there are still things I can do that able-bodied friends can't do, you know? And so if we bring that, then actually now we've not got community and disabled people, we've got community full stop.
Yeah.
That values every person for everything that they have to bring to that space.
Yeah, and I mean that leads beautifully into the co-pupper that is Kylee Co. Do you want to tell us about Kylee Co?
Yeah, when I was in hospital for a really long time, I was trying to find things that worked for me that also weren't medicalized or boring or dull or sterile. And it was also through COVID, so you couldn't have visitors. So those connections with your medical health professionals were so important. Having bright, fun things on my bed meant that it gave people something to connect with me with. People who came into my room with a fun pin or earrings, I got to have non-medical conversations, what I call a human to human conversation outside of a clinical one.
Yeah.
And I think whether you are the patient or whether you are the clinician, we're actually both humans that want to be seen as humans sitting on opposite sides of the bed. Do
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And how do we bring humanity back to some of those spaces and just get to connect as people? And yeah, so I was trying to find products that worked for me. And at one point early on, we actually brought in some glasses buttons, is what I called them. So they went on the side of your glasses so that you could put your mask over the buttons as opposed to behind your
Yeah,
ears.
cool.
Super great for people with like hearing aids and things like that. And I have a hearing impairment myself, so it was something I was looking at. And I bought 20 pairs in because it was just cheap. It was cheaper to bring them more in than less, and thought
Yeah.
I'll sell some off and make it work. Put them online, 20 minutes, sold all of them. So bought 300 pairs in, sold those before they landed. And then we bought in 1,000 pairs. And that actually created the platform to start Kylee Co.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, but it's a bigger conversation than that. And my mother-in-law was phenomenal around supporting me to kickstart. And she had a business that she's running. She's the most phenomenal crafter and quilter and has so much incredible skill set there. And she's like, well, why don't you go out and sell these things at markets and kickstart, and get that stuff behind us and get out and do markets, because I couldn't do the crafts and stuff with my hands anymore, but I love connecting with people. And then I was having more and more people, as I found solutions, people like, where did you find that and where do I get it? And I'm just like, well, if you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they're like, can you just get it in for me? And I'm like, sure,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then people started coming up to me and they're like, you're really good at finding things. I've been looking for this for 20 years. Do you know anything that might help me with this solution? And so I go out, look out there, find some options, bring some things and test them and try them. And then over time, realize that I needed to develop, set up the website and set up the platform. My mother-in-law was super adamant it needed to be called Kylee Co. And there was no other name for it. Um,
Awesome.
it took me a bit to get my head around putting my name forefront, because we don't do that as Kiwis either,
Yeah.
But she said that people will get behind a person and a known thing before they get behind just a business.
Yeah.
And that if I use what I stand for around building community and connection and getting behind each other and supporting one another and championing one another, that we can use that to push the doors open to pull others through as well. And she's not been wrong at all.
Yeah, cool.
And it's a real honor. It's a huge honor to lead this space for our community. So back to Kylee Co. We have 1,500 products on the website now, dedicated to all things accessible, showing that accessible actually works for everyone and it just
Yeah.
makes sense. Whether you are a kid or an adult or an older person or have a disability or arthritis, or whether you just like cool functional products. One of our products is a can tab opener. So like whether you have no nails or whether you have long nails or whether you have a disability or whether you have fake nails or just get frustrated opening a can tab on a fizzy drink can. We've got a product that opens that. Milk bottles, one of the cool things is we work with vendors across New Zealand who have disabilities or barriers or are clinicians, and they've designed and made solutions. We champion those on Kylee Co and promote them to community to get behind one another. And the thing is like if you've got 50 different people making 50 different products, they want to make their product that they've designed, but now you're kicked into e-commerce and a website and social media and marketing. But what if you don't have the supports to do that? But also, I have to know about 50 different businesses to find the 50 different products now.
Yeah.
But each community only has the breadth of each community. And I was like, can you imagine if we created a platform for all things accessible where you go to one space where you find all those things in one place?
Yeah.
And now we champion one another, and my community is now accessing all other 50 people's communities, and their communities are accessing, and collectively we are championing accessibility and driving it forward.
And how
And
good
then
is
we
that for
can
everyone? Yeah.
yeah, and now we can work with people who are in hospital a lot or are bedbound or who love to draw, and they design pins for us, and we put them up, and then they get a job and income and value. And or we've got people that come in and volunteer as a stepping stone into other things, or um it's just, I know how isolating it is. I know how hard it is to find your space and find connection and have the support behind you. The reality is, if I didn't have the support of my partner and Clipboard, which is his business
Yeah.
that he started and has recently pivoted to support our disability community and to support people to live their best lives. And does accessible technology and puts accessible technology in people's homes and gets behind people and supports us to live our best lives. But like, if I didn't have him behind me, and he does, small business support and has for a long time, then I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be able to do what I do with Kylee Co. Um, and the thing is that people look at me like, I don't know how you do all you do. And I'm like, but I don't, because I do it with community, right? I get to pick things up and I get to connect people, and like for everything and for how hard it is too. But I feel richly blessed to get to do what I do and to live the life that I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just the and co part of the name, but like when I went and had a look around the website, it had that community vibe. Like it says several times on the website, by the disability community for everyone.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of my episode with Dr. Amy Kenny when we talked about
Mm,
how many of the things that we all use every
mm.
day started in the minds of someone with a disability.
Video calling, text messaging, all of that.
All
Yep.
of that, yeah. And going, why do we not put more emphasis on
Mm.
supporting people in these spaces?
I can tell you something else that's really cool, and that like I get very excitable, as you can tell. But like one of the things I really struggled to find when we were starting out is other disabled businesses that were out there doing their thing, and how do I learn off them, and how do I work it out, because our own disability needs running business can be quite different, and there's additional challenges to navigate. What happens if my supports don't turn up in the morning? How do I navigate that? What happens when I'm in hospital for weeks at a time? How do you navigate that? How do we learn from one another? How do you manage pacing? There's wider
Yeah,
conversations. But I was like, where's the space for disabled business owners to
yeah,
connect and get behind other disabled business owners? Where's the space that we connect around what works for us? And I couldn't find it. And so we started Disabled Business Owners and Enterprise New Zealand. And
awesome.
we've got over 500 members in that group now.
That's so good.
Yeah, over the last couple of years, and we've just launched, thanks to shameless plug, thanks to Clipboard for getting behind us. We've started a monthly call, first Monday of every month from 7 till 9:30. We have a different business owner come in and share their journeys, their highs and their pitfalls, what they wish they knew, what they have learned, and how do we avoid making those same mistakes? How do we leverage off each other's successes and also leverage off the failures of one another so that we're not all having to reinvent the same wheel and make the same mistakes.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
how do we collaborate in those spaces to share ideas and designs, and doing accessible markets together, but in mainstream community, but supporting one another to be able to do them. So I'm really proud of disabled business owners and our vendors that have got behind us, but also getting behind other disabled people starting out. But it's
yeah,
not just disabled business owners, it's anyone that's self-led in their own lives, whether they're contracting or
yeah,
self-employed or have a side hustle or a hobby that they go to markets and stuff. Like it's for everyone that's trying to work it out how to do this stuff. And then how do we champion you? How do we get behind you? Yeah.
yeah. That's really cool. What are some of your favourite items that are on the store?
Oh, good question. I really love the soda can tab opener, and the can ring pull opener, like to open the top of like spaghetti cans and that kind of thing. Um, the shoelaces, the accessible shoelaces. Actually, my favorite is probably our custom designed pillowcase that I made probably in 2014. I designed it. It's cotton on one side and flannelly on the other with complementing fabrics. So when you're in hospital and you don't have much choice or control, or you can't make decisions, or you can't like move easily, you can turn your pillow over and change your environment. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can have a warm side or a cool side, or you can just do something to change your situation, and it's a tiny thing that makes a phenomenal difference.
yeah,
But I love coming up with new ideas and working, because the thing is, right, is that you come to me with a thing, something you're struggling with, and people being like, I haven't found a solution for 20 years, do you know anything? And my favorite thing is finding a solution or a product that works well for you. When we find or design a solution that works well, we put it on the website so that everyone benefits. So your own barriers, your own access needs have now opened doors for others, because if you're struggling with it, other people will be as well.
that's awesome. One of the things that I was stoked about as I looked through the store was that there wasn't purely a focus on disability inclusion and stuff. There was also inclusion as a broader concept, and so there's stuff
Mm,
on there about inclusion around race,
mhm,
inclusion around sexuality, things like that.
mhm.
Do you think your journey as someone with a disability, does that naturally open you up to seeing where other people aren't being included?
I think disability forms a part of that. Yes. But I think there's a much wider aspect to that as well. And that is being that young person that didn't have space, that didn't have inclusion, that wasn't welcome at the parties, that was discarded. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the most self confidence. I wasn't the most self assured. People look at me now and they're like, but you're so fun and bubbly and you can talk to anyone. And I'm just like, it wasn't that way. I didn't speak. I couldn't talk. I was a broken kid. Like, and I don't think, yeah, I was a real broken kid, mate. Even in the church with dad's brain tumor, we were discarded. It was his fault. God was teaching us something. We hadn't
Wow.
listened. It was sin in our life. Like, and as a young person, like that's devastating, mate. Like, we had so many people turn away. We didn't have people turn up. Like, there were a few key people that turned up. Um, and there's more that I could speak into that situation, but like all of those things have given me the insights and the learnings to be able to come alongside and champion and support others and be like, well, this is a part of my journey. Like, I understand, or I get it, or I relate, or I can connect with different people by what I've been through. So 12 years old, I determined that I would do something that created spaces of inclusion and support for others, and that includes everybody, because you can't say that you champion inclusion and support of all people if you don't genuinely then create inclusion and support of all people,
Yeah.
right? um and I mean, even up to recently, even the last 10 years, um not feeling included or welcome or accepted in the church.
Yep.
It's a huge thing for disabled people. I have cried I've cried my eyes out more times than I can count. Not for myself, but for my community, mate. Like, I I remember when Festival One started, and they said festival is a festival for all people, and so we had conversations around what that means, because festival, because the festival environment isn't inclusive and welcoming of all people.
Yeah.
And I remember having conversations with Graham, and and he said, "So what can we do, and how can we support you?" um, you know, but we started a partnership conversation of like, how do we create a inclusive space of all people for all people genuinely, and started what is now known as the Soul Lounge. Um, and it took me a long time to land on that name. I was just like adamant that it had nothing to do with disabling names.
Yes.
And I woke up, I remember it, like I was agonizing over it, because they're like, you have to come up with the name. And I'm like, I'm not good at naming. They're like, well, you have to come up with the name. It's 6 months, but bolt upright in bed like one night, like out of nowhere. And I sat up and I was like, the Soul Lounge. Because, okay, start with soul, right? When you strip every single barrier back, what is the one thing that each of us are left with individually? Is our souls, to the ability to connect human to human, one to one. And now you start to see threads of Kylee Co coming through. The ability to connect human to human, removing all barriers. But where is a place that you find identity, connection, and deep conversation and corridor, is often in a lounge or in a safe space. So we called it the Soul Lounge, which is breaking down barriers, stripping it away to connect human to human, soul to soul, removing all barriers, and creating a place of identity, support, and belonging for everybody. So we bring hospital beds on site. We have a sensory room. We bring couches and bean bags, and I have been discharged from hospital to the event, and then readmitted back to hospital after the event more than once.
Well,
I've planned more hospital. I've planned more soul lounges from a hospital room than I have probably out of it. But yeah, like I had to be able to be flat, so we had to have, we had beds and hospital beds and stuff there, and different forms of like wheelchairs and help to get around side and just to connect with people and sit back and have chats, and an art corner and a reading corner. And it started really small, and now we've got probably 100 people that come through that space now. And we've just recently partnered with Elevate Disability Ministry to step into that space more, because it's growing beyond my capacity, which
yeah,
is incredible.
that's awesome.
Um, it's phenomenal. And to see they were involved in being behind and supporting us and volunteering. And so to be able to hand that space in partnership together and have a lot more of the logistics navigated has been a real gift as well. But because it allows me to go back to what's important, which is connecting with people.
Yeah.
But so many people we've had come over the years, like I just I struggle. I really struggle, because we had one young boy and he said, this is my church that I get once a year. He'd never been to a church camp, he'd never been to a youth thing, he'd never been allowed to be in those spaces. And he's like, this is my church, this is my space, and this is God to me. And I'm just like, how is it fair that we have, and like I sit come Sunday, I have a line of people waiting to talk to me, like, and just share their stories with me, and of how this is their community, or they've met God first and foremost in this space, or how important it is to them because it's their church that they get once a year. And I'm just like, it's amazing that we're handing them what I call it. I kind of talk about it like we're handing them a cupcake that they're trying to make last a whole year, when they don't have access to the banquet table that every other Christian gets every day of the year, because
Yeah.
for whatever reason they don't feel accepted, or they're not accepted, or there's exclusion, or they can't get to church, or they're not accepted. And there's a whole
Yeah.
bigger conversation around it.
Yeah.
But the privilege to hold that space for people, and for people to get genuine connection and community and genuine friendship and fellowship. And we watched a girl, we had an accessible Kylee one year, and we got everyone up and dancing and watching the smiles and the faces and the expressions of joy. Like, you don't lose that ever. That stuff it's powerful. And Soul Lounge and Festival One is a a real solid space for people year on year. And I love the stories that come from it. We actually have a rule that you do not pray for people at festival. At Soul Lounge, there's no prayer for healing. Full stop. We don't do prayer. Full stop. Because you don't know what someone coming into that space has been through or is going through. You don't know their beliefs. If that person asks for prayer themselves, then we have safe prayer buddies that we will connect you with, and you can be part of that, but you have to have a prayer person that's trusted in that space, but you don't step out of the scope of what they've asked prayer for either. You don't go off on your own tangent. And we've had some pushback at times from able-bodied volunteers coming in. But actually, when we explain it, most people are like, oh, that's cool. And anyone coming into festival with a disability or a barrier or in anything are just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Because we are not here to judge or condemn or make assumptions about you and your journey, right? We are here primarily and only to love and support and create a safe space for all people. Sometimes I think the church has actually got it wrong. Like, I think we get caught on the wrong things.
Yeah.
You walk, I roll, so what? Like,
Yeah.
I'll pray for healing for all my life. I will believe for healing. I'm also not going to get so fixated and focused on it that I miss everything else he's trying to do and show and teach around me. Because had I been instantly healed, Kylee Co wouldn't exist, the Soul Lounge wouldn't exist, the community and the mentoring we support people with, disabled business owners wouldn't exist. Like, a whole lot of different spaces we're involved in wouldn't exist. And I like who I am and who I've had to fight to be. I don't know that I would give that up. But I don't even know that's the point. The point is we accept people and we support them for where they are, and we don't put our own assumptions and judgments onto someone else or make a space unsafe for them based on our own beliefs. Because, like, I think I was telling you, I went up for prayer once for my shoulder, and I was made to prove my healing more than 30 times by raising my shoulder. Then finally they said, well, as you proclaim, you have been healed, because when two or more are gathered, you are healed. Therefore, as you continue to walk out this healing, you will see it fully restored this week as you maintain your faith to that belief. And I'm just like, well, whose faith and whose belief? And but also, what damage does that do? Because we don't have a cookie cutter God. We don't know why. Not everything is healed. But I have faith to trust that my God is bigger than that. And I have faith that I can believe, I'd believe and trust Him regardless, that I don't have to know and understand. And I just have to continue taking the next step and love and support others. And yeah.
I think sometimes we get caught on what we can see and forget about what's behind that. And I remember Manny Cox saying to me one time, what's a greater miracle? That I get up out of my wheelchair and can walk like an able-bodied person, so that I can fit into this community, or that this community's hearts would be changed so that I don't have to.
Preach. And if you flip the script on it, what does it mean to be a follower of Christ and live for Him? Like, the thing is that my pain and my struggles mean that I have to dig into my faith every single day to get through a day. Am I the privileged one, or are you?
Yeah.
Like, because actually I can't get through a day without drawing into myself and digging into my faith. Like, and having to wrestle that and draw deep. And that depth of drawing has had me go to really, I've had to really wrestle for my faith and wrestle for where I stand in it. But it's like a tree in the desert. It draws so deep down that it becomes an immovable force that nothing can shake. And yeah, like, I roll into a church and everyone wants to see me get up and walk out. And we have this perception that I'm not healed and that I'm not living a full life.
Yeah.
God came, we've got the scripture, John 10:10, the devil came to steal, kill, and destroy, but God came to bring life that we might live it to the full. And I realized one day the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy my hope, my faith, my ability to stay firm in trial, my ability to proclaim God's goodness. God came that I might live life and live it to the full, that no matter what, I can live a full and whole life completely in Him, regardless of external circumstances. I can live a full life from a bed at home. I can live a full life from a hospital bed. I can live a full life because, like, in any circumstance, because it's how we position ourselves in those spaces. Like, how do I position myself to live a full life, and what does a full life mean? Because I don't think, a lot of my friends teased me and they said, I don't think you could argue that you don't live a full life now. They're like, you live more full life than like a lot of us. But I think too that having an unknown entity of time ticking above your head, and having come so close to that line, it makes you live differently. And it makes you live with more purpose, and it makes you live with more vigor, for me anyway. And but the thing is, we forget we've all got that time ticking on our head. No one knows tomorrow. So what can I do with what I have today in my hands? And how can I use what I have to open doors and create pathways of support and inclusion for others as well? Yeah.
Man, there's so much more I could talk to you about to dig into, and I'd love to, but we really do need to wrap it up. Yeah, so thanks so much for giving time to talk, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people who are really not only inspired but also challenged to rethink some things, to explore more conversations in this area, and so yeah, thank you for your heart for community. Your heart for doing what you can with what's in your hand, which is an important message that we can all take away from this. Thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
Thanks so much, Kylee, for this powerful kōrero that reminds us of the beauty that lies in bringing together the strengths we all find within us. Thank you for who you are and for what you do. Here is a blessing for you. Kylee, may you continue to live the fullest of lives, empowered by those around you, as you empower others to live full lives as well. May you continue to break down barriers for people, helping them to question their presuppositions about others or about themselves, and bringing people together to flourish in community. May you continue to teach and to learn from other entrepreneurs and business owners, finding ways to do business differently as your situation changes day to day and week to week. May Kylee Co continue to make an impact in the world, one accessible product at a time, and may it grow and reach more and more people in the disability community and well beyond. May you continue to find hope in the hard times, joy in the journey, and meaning in your mahi, and may the work you do continue to fill you to overflowing with life. Lastly, may you know you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strahan for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when I have a special episode where Stephen Garden takes over and interviews me for his Fresh Aesthetic podcast. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.